Have you ever felt your heart suddenly race, your chest tighten, and your thoughts spiral out of control? And in that moment, you honestly believe that something terrible was happening to you. Are you about to die? Are you losing control? Or are you about to go crazy? If so, you're not alone and you are not helpless. I'm Dr. Sean, a psychologist and mental health educator with over 30 years of clinical experience. And in this video, I want to talk about panic attacks, what they are, why they keep coming back, and why you should not live in fear of the next one. But please stay with me until the end because that's what I'm going to talk about. The one thing that you're probably doing that's keeping your panic attacks alive and coming back with force. By the end of this video, you'll understand that a panic attack is not a sign that something catastrophic is happening to you, even though you may believe this in the moment when it's occurring. It's also my goal to give you practical, evidence-based techniques that you can use without gimmicks or false promises. I'm also going to describe exactly what's happening inside your body when you have a panic attack and when you use the scientifically backed coping strategies that I'm going to describe. However, an important caveat to note is that while I'm a highly trained and very experienced psychologist, I am not your psychologist. So what I would ask you to do is if you have panic attacks, please see your family practitioner so that you can undergo a medical assessment to rule out some medical issues that can mimic panic symptoms. Now, don't get too worried because most of these are very benign and easily treatable. It could be things like hypoglycemia, medication side effects, or perhaps a problem with your thyroid gland. But we want to rule these things out before we move forward and assume that they're panic-related symptoms. What is a panic attack? Basically, a panic attack is when two things come together. The first is when you have some sort of a strong alarm reaction in the body that really is a false alarm. This can be triggered by genetic factors. Perhaps in your family, you just have a genetic predisposition to your adrenal glands secreting too much adrenaline and noradrenaline. It could be because you've been drinking too much coffee. Perhaps you're under stress because of work-related issues or family conflicts. And one thing that I often see is that people are prone to experience panic attacks because they've had an unfortunate history of trauma in their background, and they experience something in the present day that reminds them of that trauma, and it puts them into a full-blown emergency alarm system response. The second thing that happens is that we get a cognitive response. We have thoughts or appraisals that what we're experiencing is catastrophic and that somehow it's going to kill us. This as well is an alarm reaction. But these two phenomena, the physical reactions and then the thoughts that something horrible is happening, begin to play into each other and we spiral. The more we react, the more scared we become. The more scared we become, the more our body goes into fight or flight. But I want you to think about panic attacks more like a sensitive smoke detector in your house. Maybe it goes off when you're toasting bread. This doesn't mean that we want to get rid of the alarm. We just want to turn it down. And that's exactly what we want to do with panic attacks. I'd also like to offer you some reassurance. I've been practicing for over 30 years and I've treated probably 1,000 people with panic attacks. I have never, in any point in my career, ever experienced somebody who has died as a result of a panic attack. And to further support that, I've reviewed the clinical literature in medicine and psychology. And over decades and decades of research, we can't find one case study that illustrates that a healthy person has died as a result of a panic attack. So why do they feel so frightening? Well, overall, a panic attack is designed to keep us alive. And you'll see that, for example, if you know of anyone who's got anaphylactic shock in response to an allergic reaction, maybe shellfish or peanut butter. What's the one thing they carry? An EpiPen. What's in an EpiPen? Epinephrine. Now, epinephrine and adrenaline are the exact same thing. They're just two different words for the exact same chemical. But we give people an EpiPen and shoot epinephrine into them because it opens up their airway, helps their heart to beat faster, and so on. And it shows that this response is a good one. But what I often see in my practice is that essentially what torments people is that they don't understand that these normal, healthy reactions are designed to help us, and they engage in a catastrophic fear that these reactions are going to harm them. Let me explain. When you feel in danger, our adrenal glands release adrenaline and noradrenaline. First, when we get a shot of adrenaline and noradrenaline from our adrenal glands, we begin to breathe very quickly, but we also get lightheaded, and we begin to conclude that we're starved for oxygen, and that's frightening. But this is a critical misperception. When we're breathing really quickly, we're taking in more than enough oxygen. But what do we release? We breathe in oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is relevant in a panic attack because in order to release oxygen from hemoglobin, we need carbon dioxide. Hemoglobin carries oxygen through our blood system so it can be delivered wherever it's needed. But we need a key to release it to go into our brain, our muscles, and our vital organs. And that key is carbon dioxide. So when we begin to hyperventilate, it's important to note that we're not starving for oxygen. What we're doing is we're exhaling and off-gassing too much carbon dioxide. And there's a really easy fix for this. One is we breathe in the box. Breathe in. Hold, exhale, and hold. And do all that very gently. But what you're doing by holding just for a few seconds is you're allowing carbon dioxide to build up in your bloodstream, and it's unlocking the oxygen from hemoglobin that's going to your brain, and you no longer feel lightheaded. It's that simple. In fact, if there's only one thing that you do during a panic attack, it's to realize that nothing bad is happening and begin to breathe in the box. However, there's a second thing I would like you to do when you're breathing in the box, and that is to breathe in, hold, slowly exhale, and hold, but do it all through your nose. Inhale through your nose, hold, and then slowly exhale through your nose and hold. There's two reasons for that. Number one, our nasal passages are a little bit smaller than the airway in our throat, so it forces us to slow the inhalation and then to slow the exhalation. And this lets carbon dioxide build up. The second thing that occurs is that when we breathe in through our nose, hold, and then slowly exhale through our nose and hold, it triggers our parasinus cavity to increase the production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is an amazing chemical because, number one, it triggers the vagal response, which lowers our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, and causes us to breathe in a more relaxed way. You don't really have to remember all of these scientific explanations. All you have to know is when you have a panic attack, you're getting more than enough oxygen, and just breathe in, hold, slowly exhale, all through your nose, and hold. Breathe in that box shape, and you will increase carbon dioxide and induce a relaxation response. It's one of the immutable laws of physiology and biology. And even more frightening for many people is that they notice that their heart starts to beat unevenly, and it may even skip a beat. And they start to think, oh no, I'm going to have a heart attack, or I'm having heart failure. I actually look at this as a very reassuring sign. What you're experiencing is something we call heart rate variability. Heart rate variability refers to the fact that there's variability between the timing of our heartbeats. A normal heart does not beat like a metronome. Bump, 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 bump. It beats more like a jazz drummer. If you ever watch good jazz, a jazz drummer creates space and syncope when they're playing, and it creates beautiful music. Your heart operates much the same way. It doesn't beat once every second. Let's say you have a heart rate of 60 beats per minute. It does not go boom, boom, boom. This heart rate variability is actually a sign that your heart is operating perfectly because it's responding and adapting to the challenges in the environment. We also have research that shows that heart rate variability is a sign of overall better cardiovascular health, that people who experience this are more resilient and they tend to be healthier overall. So it's really important that when you experience that pounding in your chest or a skipped beat, to view this as a sign that your heart is doing exactly what it should. Another thing that might frighten you are visual changes. Because our body is going into fight or flight, it prepares us to sense danger. We get tunnel vision. We don't see things in the periphery. We focus entirely on threat. But because our ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years ago, didn't fight with planes and jets and rocket propelled grenades and so on, they fought hand to hand, which meant that all of the threats were right in front of them. So consequently, as a vestige of that history, we respond the same way as our ancestors many thousands of years ago. We lose our depth perception. We focus more on letting light into our eyes, and that can sometimes make us feel a little spacey. We don't see things clearly. And if you combine that with hyperventilating, those changes can put us into kind of a state of derealization where we feel like we're in a movie or a dream, and that becomes frightening. But again, this is exactly what nature intends for us, and this is not at all dangerous. One other really interesting thing that happens during a panic attack is sometimes you notice your mouth gets dry and your stomach feels funny. You feel like you have to go to the bathroom or you're going to throw up. That again is not an abnormal response. It's meant to be healthy. And if you think about it this way, when our ancestors went into battle, would you want them to face a wild animal or the thought of being stabbed or injured in some way and having a full stomach, full bladder, and full bowels? Or would you want them to have an empty stomach and bladder and bowels so they're nice and clean? So when we experience a panic attack, again, as a false alarm, our body is preparing us for danger and it wants to blow the ballast, get rid of everything all at once so that we're healthy and clean. And if we get injured, we will not suffer septic shock. There's also a really interesting finding. I work with military and policing units all around the world, and I've worked with a lot of canine units. What I typically find is that if a police officer responds to a call and there's a criminal right in front of them, they let the dog out of the truck and it goes right at the criminal. However, if the dog has to start tracking, what's the first thing the dog does when it gets out of the truck? It doesn't run after the criminal. I'll guarantee you every canine officer will say the same thing. It goes to the bathroom, number one and number two. The reason for that is that the dog's body is not going to rely on food in its stomach to give it energy. Instead, your body is going to give you a flood of chemicals, adrenaline, noradrenaline, blood sugar, cholesterol. All of these chemicals give you energy, and that's going to be immediate. So we don't need food in our stomach, and that food in our stomach can actually hurt us if we get wounded. So what do we want to do? Throw it up, get it out by any means necessary. However, that confuses people when you get that sick stomach or the dry mouth. The dry mouth is going because you don't need saliva to soften up food. A very normal reaction. But again, when you get this and you don't understand what's happening, it terrifies you. So what you're seeing through this is that it's not what's happening to us that is the key. It's how we mentally appraise what's happening. And I'm going to give you another interesting tidbit here. Do you know that when you look at that person that you absolutely love or are infatuated with, and you know what I'm talking about, you look at them and they're just the most beautiful creature on the planet. They smell amazing, and the sound of their voice just causes you to lose your ability to think. Your heart starts pounding, it even skips a beat, and perhaps you feel butterflies in your stomach. Did you know that that longing feeling, that loving feeling of infatuation is exactly the same process chemically as a panic attack? What differentiates a panic attack from that loving feeling? What we think and how we appraise it. So, I want you to really focus on what's going on in your body because it's not meant to hurt you. It's meant to keep you alive and well. You're going to breathe heavier. You're going to feel a little lightheaded, but that's just because you're off gassing carbon dioxide. Your muscles are going to get tight. Your vision's going to change. You're going to feel like throwing up. This is meant to be a good thing. And I want you to realize that that means that your body is doing exactly what it should. It's just a false alarm. So, how do we turn it down? We have techniques that we call TIP that are highly effective. TIP is TIPP. The T is temperature. We know that cold temperatures bring down panic. I is intensive exercise. It also helps relieve panic symptoms. The first P is that prolonged breathing in the box that we've already talked about. And the second P is progressive muscle relaxation. So let's look at temperature. Why does cold temperature bring down panic attacks? It's part of the mammalian dive reflex. Now, mammals, when they go in cold water, have to hold their breath. So whales and dolphins, they can dive as deep as 3,000 feet, but they don't breathe underwater, so they have to hold their breath. And what happens to the temperature of the water as we dive deeper and deeper? It gets colder. Now, that cold temperature works on our body by lowering our heart rate, relaxing our muscles, and putting our body into a conservative state. So we use less energy. That's great when you're diving deep so that you don't use up a lot of oxygen. We can use this knowledge during a panic attack by being aware of the fact that if we splash cold water on our face or take some ice out of the fridge and the freezer and put it on the back of our neck or our head or on our cheeks, that's going to lower our heart rate and induce a sense of relaxation. If it's winter, we can go outside, go for a nice relaxing walk, maybe unzip our jacket in the cold. Or at other times, we can take a cool shower, and that will kind of help us relax a little bit. I is intensive exercise. Now, why does that work? Keep in mind that during a panic attack, your body is making a ton of fuel for fight or flight. So let's use that fuel, right? If it's fight, we may work out in the gym, hit the heavy bag, lift weights. If it's flight and we want to run away from somebody, we can use that constructively by getting on a treadmill or going for a walk around our neighborhood. When we do that, we burn off those stress chemicals, blood sugar, cholesterol, adrenaline, and those levels come down. If you're diabetic, you'll know that when you have a panic attack, your sugars shoot up through the roof. But when you calm down and you exercise, those sugar levels drop. We can use that knowledge to cope with a panic attack. The breathing in the box, the paced breathing, that's the first P. We've already discussed that one. And the second P is progressive muscle relaxation. That's very much like intensive exercise. We take in a breath and hold it and tighten up one body area, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. And then we slowly exhale. Next, we would just breathe in the box for about 30 seconds. And then after a little bit of time, we tense the other arm. So hold it, squeeze tight, 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 tight. And then we exhale and feel the tension just escape from our arm. And right now, both of my arms are feeling warm and relaxed. But all of these techniques, tip, temperature, intensive exercise, prolonged breathing in the box, and progressive muscle relaxation, help us put the brakes on a panic attack. They give us confidence that one, nothing catastrophic is happening during a panic attack. Even though it feels dreadful, our body is reacting as it should. This is healthy and normal. Second, we have the techniques through TIP to bring down that alarm reaction. However, putting on the brakes is only half of the equation. The one thing that you may do that keeps panic attacks coming back is that you avoid situations that cause panic. About a year ago, I treated a very lovely young lady who was having panic attacks, and it particularly hit when she was going to her family cottage. This triggered it for a number of reasons. One, she had a bad panic attack at her family cottage, so she paired the cottage and panic attacks together. My panic attacks will happen at the cottage. Second, when she went to her cottage, she drove away from the safety of her home and her town. There was a hospital, there was EMS, and out in the wilderness, she felt more vulnerable. So what happened? It actually triggered her to have more panic attacks. And what do we do when we have panic attacks? We stop going to the place where we have panic attacks. So in her case, she stopped going to her cottage. And how did she feel? She felt better. She felt relieved that she wasn't going there. The problem with avoidance is that it generalizes. So not only did she stop going to the cottage, but after a while, she stopped going on vacations with friends or going to the mall. And as that fear generalizes, we become more insulated and more prone to stay at home. However, what she did was through our therapy, she came to realize that her panic attacks were not a sign of danger. They were a false alarm, and that she had the power not only to bring them down, but she gained the insight that the panic attacks were there to help her. They just weren't needed. So what I became really proud of was that this young lady went to New York City with her friends. And when she was in her hotel, she had a full-blown panic attack. What did she do? She splashed cold water on her face. She went out in the corridor and walked up and down the corridor, and her panic attacks came down. But her friends were eager to go out to the bars and clubs in New York City, and she went. She went with them. She went willingly, and she actually had a minor panic attack when she was at one of the clubs. But what did she do? She went outside in the cold, let it calm down, and then she went right back in. And when she came back, she looked me proudly in the eye and said, "I no longer fear my panic attacks." So I want you to do these two things. One, understand what panic attacks are and what they are not. Two, I want you to work on the tip skills to bring your panic symptoms down. But third, and most importantly, once you gain confidence that panic attacks are not going to hurt you and you can bring them down, I want you to go out there and look for situations that can make you feel anxious, because you've got this. And when you do that, you are going to be free of panic forever. I hope this was beneficial to you, and I thank you for taking time to watch my video. Take good care.